One of the figures that I talk about in history is Queen Nzinga of Ndogo, which is today Angola. And when we look at her history, she had understood that there was a strategy that was needed. So she Christianized herself. So, she became Anna de Souza. She took on the religion, and she took on a European name to be able to be seen as a stronger ally with them. But that wasn't good enough. She married, a king of Matamba, so she could align herself with a neighboring African kingdom to be able to have a greater stronghold, to be able to fight against the Portuguese. She also, put merits in place in regards to outlawing slavery, so that those who were enslaved have refuge within her kingdoms to be able to fight for the kingdom that she was developing, because everybody was free. And as a result of being free, you then commit yourself to service to ensure that we continue to sustain that freedom. So strategies had been something that we've always adapted to. And as I said before, in regards to the rules, every time she would make adaptations, the rules would change, they would shift, because it was very much about how do we gain stronger control of a continent, of these regions, to have access to the minerals, resources, people that everybody else is getting access to, but we're so behind that these regions we haven't been able to explore, because we've got these kings and queens here who are not allowing us full access, and we deserve the access. We should be having the access, but ensuring that the pressure was never let up on the continent of Africa, because she fought for 40 years before signing a treaty with Portugal. And it's only because, she lost her sisters, she lost her children. So many people are lost and continue to be lost. And you think to yourself, how long can you be adapted into face-to-face, hand-to-hand warfare before enough is enough? Before you say, okay, you allow somebody else you give in to them. 40 years is my lifetime. And if somebody had been fighting for my entire lifetime, when do you get tired? When do you start to look at the impoverishment of your people, not being able to sleep at night, not being able to grow their children in safe environments, not being able to, drink water in certain areas because it may be poisoned, or lands being burnt, or, infrastructure is being torn down once you try and build them to build your towns. The Europeans have come in and destroyed them. So there's no sense of trying to build or having anything that you're able to see for a continuity level into the future, because every time you build something, it's been destroyed because you're not playing ball. And as a result of not playing ball, you will not be able to grow, because I cannot get what I want in your region. So when we're looking at the continent, throughout the continent, all of the countries had people fighting back, had people fighting against European colonialism, had people working alongside them to be able to see how they could benefit. Because again, it's about strategy. And at no point did Africa just free itself up and say, oh, well, we admit defeat. It took generations, it took centuries, it took time for them to get to the point where we're seeing what we're seeing today. So when we're looking at how do we heal, how do we overcome that, is very much around how prepared we are to have a conversation with ourselves about the things that we see and we feel and we know are wrong, and how much we're prepared to invest ourselves into making it a little bit better. Because that's where we're coming from. You're trying to get me to react to why couldn't we see it? And again, when I'm looking at what we're looking at, or what is looked at on the continent, is very much around, because we're all trying to survive. And as I started, remember, we were not doing without on the continent. So that concept in our mind, how we plan things, how we strategize, is going to be very different to the European who is struggling, who is seeing himself as surviving, who is dealing with different illnesses and infanticide and arid lands and things like that. We're not dealing with any of those concepts. So the development of our own brains isn't around impoverishment. It's around, what we already have, and how we build our societies around structuring that. We've got running water. We've had aqueducts since the 5000s. It's something that's been universal throughout societies within the continent of Africa, and how we develop and how we spend time developing these cultural practices. But when we're looking at history now, and we're looking at the void from a generation from before to the generation now, there's a big missing link of how do we jump back to connect some of that information, connect some of that continuity. So when we're looking at what Europeans are bringing to us, we're distracted from actually reuniting those interconnections that we've had on times that we cannot even comprehend, to be able to understand who and what we are and how we actually preserve our legacies moving forward for the future. Because right now we're looking at how we sustain ourselves educationally, economically, and how we viably are able to, you know, pay these bills and feed ourselves and make sure that our children have access to a world that they all belong in. But that legacy we're also leaving behind, because it's not a priority in that kind of way. And the disconnection that many of us have or don't believe that we have isn't a priority within the world that we live in. They were coming to help Africa from their perspectives, for Africa to also help them. So when we look at, you know, the train lines in Africa, there was not, you know, let's create a train line from Abuja to Egypt, you know, for us to be able to go north or anything like that. It was literally within the region of the occupation of the European where they had created their infrastructures. It was never for Africa to develop, because there was never a concept that Africa would ever be free. So, you know, all of this independence was not a part of anybody's plan. That's why when we decided that we were going to be free, we had to pay money back because of all of the infrastructure that they had invested in. They had seen themselves to continuously be investing from that. So when you've created something, you're not going to just give it up to somebody else. You're going to look at how much you would have made over the next 20 years. And the person that's taken over that has to pay for that. That's why slave masters were given reparations for the property of the enslaved Africans and enslaved people of the world, because they foresaw the profit margin that they would be able to make that they were losing now with the abolition of slavery. That's intelligence, you know, because anybody who gets you to do something that is uncomfortable for you to do has to be a very, very, very intelligent strategist. And as a result, the idea is that how do you benefit from somebody who is suffering, but let them not see that they are suffering?